The mining station had been spinning around planet Kepler 442b for over 50 years. It was home to 40,000 Harani people who spent their lives digging precious metals from dead rocks floating in space. The station looked like a giant metal flower with spinning arms that caught sunlight through solar panels. Administrator Veltun stood looking out the big window of the command center. His bug-like eyes watched the enemy ships moving in circles around their home. The Harani people looked like giant insects, but they were gentle creatures. They had never fought wars or hurt anyone. All they wanted was to mine metals and build things. For 3 days now, the Keth warships had been getting closer. The Keth were different from the Harani. They were born fighters who took whatever they wanted. They had heard about the rare metals the Harani were mining and decided they wanted those metals for themselves. Veltun's hands shook as he pressed them against the thick glass. His people were scared. Children were crying in the lower levels of the station. Families huddled together in their small homes, waiting for something terrible to happen. The station had strong shields that protected them from space rocks and radiation. But these shields were never meant to stop military weapons. Every few hours, the Keth ships would fire warning shots that made the whole station shake. Each blast reminded everyone that their time was running out. Behind Veltun, the command center buzzed with nervous activity. Officers with compound eyes like mirrors worked at glowing control panels. Red warning lights flashed everywhere, making strange shadows dance across the walls. Communications officer Lyra Ka turned from her station. Her voice was high and musical, the way all Harani voices sounded when they were frightened. Administrator, our quantum communication system is still working, she said. But if we send another message, the Keth ships will find us right away. They have been trying to jam our signals. Veltun closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about his daughter Lyra Ka, who was only 12 years old. She was hiding with the other children in the emergency shelters deep inside the station. He thought about all the families who trusted him to keep them safe. The Harani had always believed that if you called for help, someone would come. It was part of their culture. When a Harani was in trouble, others would always try to help. But they had never needed help from people who lived among the stars. Send the message on every frequency we have, Veltun said. Maybe someone out there will hear us. Maybe someone will care enough to help. Lyra Ka's 6 fingers moved quickly over her control panel. The message was simple but desperate. It included their exact location in space, how many people lived on the station, and what was happening to them. Most importantly, it included a plea that came from the heart of every Harani on the station. The quantum signal shot out into space faster than light itself. It traveled through the dark emptiness between stars, carrying the hopes of 40,000 innocent people. The message reached the Galactic Council first. The Council was made up of the most powerful alien civilizations in the galaxy. They met in a beautiful crystal palace that floated above a perfect planet. When they received the Harani message, they talked about it for exactly 17 minutes. The Alteran Confederation said they could not risk their expensive spaceships to save a mining colony. The Trade Federation ran calculations on their computers and decided that helping the Harani would cost too much money. They marked the Kepler station as acceptable losses, and moved on to other business. But the message did not stop there. It kept traveling through space, reaching smaller worlds and forgotten colonies on the edge of known space. Far away from the center of galactic civilization, there was a small human monitoring station. It looked like a metal cube with antennas sticking out in all directions. Inside, 2 people worked the night shift, listening to radio signals from across the galaxy. Lieutenant Blake Thompson was 28 years old and had been monitoring alien communications for 3 years. He came from Detroit and had joined the Space Force because he wanted to explore the unknown. Most nights were boring, filled with routine trade messages and weather reports from distant worlds. Tonight was different. The computer system started beeping loudly. Red lights flashed on Blake's control panel. An automated system had detected something unusual in the radio waves coming from deep space. Blake put on his headphones and listened carefully. The signal was in an alien language, but the computer was already translating it into English. As he read the translation, his face grew serious. "Captain Williams," Blake called to his commanding officer. "You really need to see this." Captain Carmen Williams had been in the Space Force for 15 years. She had fought in 2 wars and survived 3 alien first contact situations. Her hair was starting to turn gray, and she had scars on her hands from a battle near Mars 5 years ago. She was tough, smart, and cared deeply about protecting innocent people. Carmen walked over to Blake's station and read the message on his screen. Her dark eyes grew hard as she understood what she was reading. 40,000 innocent people were about to die, and nobody was going to help them. Get me Admiral Jackson on the emergency channel, Carmen ordered. Tell him it's a priority alpha situation. Blake's hands moved quickly over his controls, opening a secure communication line to Earth Command. Within seconds, Admiral Jackson's face appeared on the main screen. He was a tall man with dark skin and eyes that had seen too much war. "What's the situation, Captain?" the Admiral asked. Carmen took a deep breath. "Sir, we have 40,000 civilians under attack in the Kepler system. The Galactic Council has refused to help them. They're going to die unless someone does something." Admiral Jackson was quiet for a long moment. He was thinking about rules and regulations, about politics and consequences. But he was also thinking about something else. He was thinking about what it meant to be human in a galaxy where nobody else seemed to care about saving innocent lives. "Captain," he finally said, "contact Captain Davis on the Defiance. Tell her we have a humanitarian mission that requires immediate attention." Carmen smiled for the first time in days. She knew exactly what the Admiral meant. The human race was about to do something that would change the galaxy forever. The Galactic Council building looked like a massive crystal palace floating in space above the planet Prima. It was one of the most beautiful sights in the galaxy, with walls made of pure diamond that caught starlight and threw rainbows across the meeting chambers. This was where the most powerful alien civilizations made decisions that affected billions of lives across thousands of worlds. Inside the main chamber, representatives from 4 to 7 different alien species sat in circular rows that rose up like a giant stadium. The room was filled with strange sounds as different aliens communicated in their own ways. Some made clicking noises with their mandibles, others hummed in frequencies that vibrated through the air, and a few spoke in harmonic tones that sounded like music. At the center of it all stood Chancellor Corvex of the Altaran Confederation. His people were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, and they knew it. Corvex was tall and thin with pale blue skin that seemed to glow under the chamber's lights. His eyes were completely white, and when he spoke, his voice had no emotion in it at all. The Altarans had evolved beyond feelings like anger or sadness. They made every decision based on mathematics and logic. To them, the universe was just a giant equation that needed to be solved in the most efficient way possible. "Fellow representatives," Corvex began, his mechanical voice echoing through the chamber, "we have received a distress signal from the Harani mining station in the Kepler system. The situation is regrettable, but we must consider the larger picture." He waved his hand, and holographic images appeared in the air above the chamber. Star maps showed trade routes, military positions, and economic zones spread across 3 sectors of space. Numbers and calculations floated next to each image. Military intervention against the Keth Dominion would require deploying battle fleets from the 2nd, 5th, and 7th Defense Groups, Corvex continued. This would leave 17 trade routes unprotected and create instability in 3 major sectors. The mathematical probability of larger conflicts increases by 6 to 7%. Near the back of the chamber, Trade Federation Representative Bixnall moved his 8 tentacles in a gesture of agreement. The Trade Federation was made up of species that cared more about money than anything else. Bixnall looked like a giant octopus, but instead of living in the ocean, he lived among the stars and counted profits. "The Chancellor speaks wisely," Bixnall said, his voice bubbling like water. "Our economic analysis shows that military action would disrupt 7 major trade routes. Profit margins across the entire Federation would decrease by 12%. The cost of saving these miners would be approximately 2 billion galactic credits." Other representatives nodded in agreement. The Crystalline Collective spoke in musical tones about resource allocation. The machine intelligence sent data packets directly into the chamber's computers. The insectoid hive made clicking sounds that translated to discussions about efficient use of military assets. In the small section reserved for observer species, Ambassador Robert Carter sat listening to this cold discussion of 40,000 lives. He was the first human ever allowed to attend council meetings, and after 2 years of alien diplomacy, he was starting to understand how the galaxy really worked. Robert was a former college professor from Chicago who had been chosen to represent humanity because he was good at learning languages and understanding different cultures. But right now, he wished he had been a soldier instead. Soldiers knew how to fight when talking wasn't enough. The human section was tiny compared to the grand chambers given to major civilizations. Earth was still considered a minor world on the edge of known space. Humans had only been part of galactic society for 5 years, and most aliens still thought of them as primitive newcomers who didn't understand how civilized beings behaved. Robert stood up, even though protocol said observer species were supposed to stay quiet during council sessions. His movement caught the attention of several alien representatives, who turned to look at him with curiosity. "What about the 40,000 civilians?" Robert asked, his voice carrying across the chamber. "What about the children and families who are going to die while you run your calculations?" Chancellor Corvex turned his white eyes toward the human section. When he spoke, his voice showed no irritation or surprise. To him, Robert's question was just another data point to be processed. "Acceptable losses, Ambassador Carter," the Chancellor replied. "In any complex system, some components must be sacrificed for the stability of the whole. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Surely even your young species can understand this basic principle of civilized governance." Robert felt his hands clench into fists. He had grown up hearing stories about humans who had risked everything to save strangers. His grandfather had stormed beaches in World War II. His mother had been a firefighter who ran into burning buildings to rescue people she had never met. "We understand it differently," Robert said, his voice getting louder. "Where I come from, we believe that every life matters. We believe that if you can save someone, you save them. We don't leave people behind just because it's inconvenient or expensive." Several alien representatives made sounds of amusement. The idea that a primitive species would question the wisdom of the Galactic Council seemed funny to them. Bixnall's tentacles wiggled in what his species considered laughter. "Your emotional attachment to individual lives is understandable," Chancellor Corvex said in the same mechanical tone. "Young species often struggle with such primitive responses. As you evolve, you will learn that true wisdom lies in serving the greater good, not in wasting resources on lost causes." The vote was quick and unanimous among the major powers. The Harani mining station would be classified as acceptable losses. No military aid would be sent. The Galactic Council moved on to discussing trade agreements and mining rights, as if 40,000 lives were just a minor item on their agenda. Meanwhile, far away on the edge of human space, Admiral Tyler Jackson sat in his office aboard the battleship Constitution. He was reading Captain Williams' report about the Galactic Council's decision, and his weathered face showed the anger that years of military service had taught him to control. Tyler had fought in 3 wars and seen too many good people die because politicians were afraid to make hard choices. He had scars on his left arm from a battle near Jupiter, and more scars on his heart from watching friends get abandoned when the fighting got too expensive. The Admiral stared at the star charts on his wall, focusing on one particular ship marker near the edge of human territory. The USS Defiance was the newest and most advanced warship in the human fleet. It was an experimental vessel that combined human engineering with alien technology they had carefully studied and improved upon. More importantly, it was commanded by Captain Angela Davis, one of the finest officers Tyler had ever known. If anyone could pull off an impossible rescue mission, it would be her. "Get me Captain Davis on secure channel," Tyler ordered his communications officer. "And pull up the files on Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was a classified military authorization that allowed independent humanitarian action when civilian lives were at stake and official channels had failed. It had been written by humans who understood that sometimes you had to break rules to do what was right. As the communication system connected him to the Defiance, Admiral Jackson made a decision that would change how the galaxy saw humanity forever. The Council might abandon those miners, but humans never left anyone behind. The USS Defiance hung in space like a metal predator waiting to strike. It didn't look like the sleek alien ships that glided through the galaxy with perfect curves and shining surfaces. The Defiance was built by humans, and it looked exactly like what it was, a weapon of war designed by people who understood that sometimes violence was the only way to protect the innocent. The ship was covered in angular armor plates that overlapped like dragon scales. Missile pods stuck out from its sides like deadly thorns, and railgun turrets tracked back and forth, always searching for threats. Strange blue energy flickered along channels carved into the hull, showing where human engineers had combined their technology with alien power systems they had salvaged and rebuilt. On the bridge, Captain Angela Davis stood in front of a massive display screen showing the tactical situation. At 35 years old, she was the youngest captain in the human fleet, but nobody questioned her right to command. She had earned her position through 3 colonial wars and 2 dangerous first contact missions with hostile alien species. Angela had grown up in Houston, where her father worked as a mechanic and her mother taught elementary school. She had joined the Space Force because she wanted to explore the galaxy, but she had stayed because she discovered that someone needed to protect the people who couldn't protect themselves. Her uniform was crisp and clean, but her hands showed the calluses of someone who had worked with tools and weapons her entire life. Her eyes were dark and steady, the kind of eyes that never looked away when things got difficult. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Commander Victor Wilson from the tactical station. Long-range sensors are picking up 15 Keth warships surrounding the mining station. Our computers estimate they have about 12,000 enemy soldiers aboard those ships. Victor was a former Marine who had fought hand-to-hand combat on 3 different worlds. His ancestors had stormed the beaches at Normandy during World War II, and he carried their courage in his blood. He was tall and strong, with dark skin and the kind of calm confidence that came from surviving impossible situations. Angela nodded as she studied the numbers on her screen. The odds were terrible, but she had faced bad odds before and survived. More importantly, she had a crew of 200 volunteers who had answered the call for extremely hazardous duty without asking questions about their chances of coming home alive. "What's our tactical assessment, Commander?" she asked. Victor's expression didn't change as he delivered the bad news. According to every military manual ever written, this is a suicide mission. We're outnumbered 15 ships to 1. They have 60 times more firepower than we do." Angela smiled grimly. "Good thing we don't fight by the manual." Lieutenant Nina Brown, open a communication channel to Admiral Jackson. Nina Brown was the ship's communications officer, a young woman from Seattle who could speak 17 different alien languages and could hack into most alien computer systems. Her fingers flew over her control panel, establishing a secure connection back to human space. "Channel open, Captain," Nina reported. Angela looked directly into the camera that would transmit her message across dozens of light years. "Admiral Jackson, this is Captain Davis aboard the USS Defiance. We are departing immediately for a humanitarian rescue mission in the Kepler system. We will not abandon 40,000 civilians to die while bureaucrats debate acceptable losses. Defiance out." The bridge crew looked at each other with a mixture of pride and worry. They all understood what their captain had just done. If they survived this mission, they would probably face court-martial for disobeying direct orders. If they died, none of that would matter. Chief Engineer Luna Martinez looked up from her engineering console. Luna had actually helped design and build the Defiance's hybrid drive systems. She was a genius who had figured out how to combine human nuclear reactors with alien gravity manipulators to create something entirely new. "Captain," Luna called out, "the hybrid drive systems are fully online and ready for maximum burn. We can sustain full acceleration for 18 straight hours if we push everything to the limit." "Then 18 hours is our window," Angela replied, settling into her command chair. "All stations, go to battle stations. Today we're going to show this galaxy what happens when you trap innocent people and think nobody is coming to help them." Red alert lights began flashing throughout the ship as crew members ran to their combat positions. In the weapons bays, human soldiers checked their rifles and prepared boarding equipment. In engineering, technicians made final adjustments to systems that had never been tested in real combat. The Defiance's engines began to glow with an eerie blue light as the hybrid drive systems came online. Unlike the silent, smooth acceleration of alien vessels, the human ship shuddered and groaned as tremendous forces built up inside its hull. The sound was like a mechanical roar mixed with a banshee scream, and somehow that sound carried through the vacuum of space itself. Human scientists didn't fully understand why their ships made noise in the emptiness between stars. Alien vessels moved in complete silence, but human ships howled like living creatures in pain or rage. Some engineers thought it had to do with the way human emotions affected the hybrid drive systems. Others believed it was just another example of human technology refusing to behave the way it was supposed to. Navigator Diego Adams worked frantically at his station, calculating the exact coordinates they would need to reach the Kepler system. Diego had grown up in Los Angeles and had been plotting star routes since he was 15 years old. He could navigate through hyperspace by feel, using instincts that most aliens said were impossible. "Captain," Diego called out, "if we push the engines beyond their safety limits, we can reach Kepler in 14 hours instead of 18. But there's a chance the drive systems could overload and kill us all." Angela didn't hesitate for even a second. "Do it, Diego. Those people have been under attack for 3 days already. Every minute we waste is another chance for something terrible to happen to them." She turned to address her entire crew through the ship's communication system. Her voice carried to every corridor, every engineering deck, every weapons bay on the ship. "Attention all hands, this is the captain speaking. In 14 hours, we're going to drop out of hyperspace in the middle of a hostile alien fleet that wants to kill 40,000 innocent people. The odds are against us, the galaxy has already written those people off as acceptable losses, and nobody expects us to succeed." She paused, letting her words sink in throughout the ship. "But we're humans, and humans don't leave people behind. We don't calculate acceptable losses. We calculate acceptable risks. And today, The risk of crossing the galaxy to save strangers is acceptable. The risk of fighting impossible odds is acceptable. The risk of showing this cold, calculating galaxy what courage looks like is acceptable. The crew responded with cheers that echoed through every deck of the ship. 200 volunteers who had signed up for a suicide mission because it was the right thing to do. The Defiance leaped forward into hyperspace, its engine screaming defiance at the universe itself. Retry. War leader Grakmor sat on his command throne like a king watching his prey slowly die. The Keth were born predators, descended from pack hunters who had once stalked massive beasts across frozen worlds. Their bodies were covered in thick fur and sharp claws, and their yellow eyes glowed with the same hunger their ancestors had felt when cornering wounded animals. For 3 days, Grakmor had been playing with the Harani mining station. He could have destroyed it in minutes, but where was the fun in that? The Keth way was to circle their prey, strike at it piece by piece, and watch the fear grow before delivering the killing blow. His flagship was a massive black vessel shaped like a spear, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Around him, 14 other Keth warships moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting the light of the distant star. Each ship carried 800 warriors eager for battle and conquest. War leader called out his tactical officer from across the bridge. The mining station's shields are down to 30% power. We've punched holes through levels 7 through 12. Their people are starting to evacuate the damaged sections. Grakmor's lips pulled back in what his species considered a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Excellent. Let them suffer a little longer. Fear makes the victory sweeter. On the mining station, Administrator Veltun pressed his insect-like hands against the observation window and watched pieces of his home break away and drift into space. The Keth weapons had torn great holes in the station's outer ring, and he could see the emergency lights flashing where his people were trying to seal the breaches. 40,000 Harani lived on this station. Most of them were miners and engineers who had never seen violence in their entire lives. They were gentle people who solved problems by working together and sharing resources. The concept of war was so foreign to them that they didn't even have words for many military terms. Veltun had sent their distress signal 3 days ago, hoping that someone in the galaxy would care enough to help. He had believed in the Galactic Council, in the great civilizations that claimed to protect smaller species. But the silence from space told him everything he needed to know. Nobody was coming. The great species were too civilized to risk their precious ships for a mining colony. They had probably already calculated the economic impact of losing the Harani mining operation and decided it was acceptable. 40,000 lives meant nothing compared to their profit margins and political stability. Then the universe screamed. Space itself seemed to tear open like fabric being ripped apart. Reality twisted and bent as something forced its way through the barriers between dimensions. The sound that came out of that tear was unlike anything anyone in the system had ever heard before. It was part mechanical roar, like a giant engine running at maximum power. It was part animal howl, like a pack of wolves calling for battle. It was part human scream, carrying all the rage and defiance that had built up in humanity's heart over thousands of years of fighting impossible odds. The USS Defiance exploded out of hyperspace like a bullet fired from the barrel of an angry god. The ship was trailing energy and sparks from its engines, which had been pushed far beyond their designed limits to get here as fast as possible. Blue fire danced along its hull where alien technology merged with human engineering in ways that should have been impossible. On the Keth flagship, every warrior froze as that terrifying sound washed over them. War leader Grakmor leaped up from his throne, his yellow eyes wide with shock and something he had never felt before in his life, fear. "What is that sound?" he roared at his sensor operator. The young Keth at the sensor station was shaking as he tried to make sense of his readings. "Unknown vessel, war leader. Bearing 27 Mark 4. It's heading straight for us at maximum velocity." On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Angela Davis stood calmly in the center of organized chaos. Red alarm lights flashed everywhere, warning sirens howled, and her crew worked frantically at their stations. But Angela felt a strange peace settle over her. This was the moment she had been born for. "All weapons batteries, prepare for maximum rate of fire," she ordered. "Chief Martinez, I need every ounce of power you can give me from those engines." From engineering came Luna's voice, crackling with excitement and determination. "You've got it, Captain. I'm routing power from life support, artificial gravity, even the coffee makers. These engines are going to sing." The Defiance accelerated toward the Keth formation like a missile guided by pure human stubbornness. Everything about the ship's approach violated the principles of civilized space warfare. Proper military doctrine called for careful positioning, coordinated fleet movements, and calculated risks. Humans had read those manuals and decided they were written by people who had never really needed to win a fight. "Target their flagship," Angela commanded. "Commander Wilson, I want you to put everything we have into their command ship. Show these hunters what happens when they pick on people who can't fight back." Victor Wilson's hands flew over his tactical controls, locking weapons onto the massive Keth flagship. "Aye, Captain." All missile pods loaded and ready. Rail guns charged and tracking. Point defense systems armed and standing by. The Defiance opened fire with weapons that made the Keth stop and stare in disbelief. Rail guns fired solid metal slugs at incredible speeds, turning pieces of iron into weapons that hit with the force of small meteors. Missile pods launched dozens of warheads that could track their targets through evasive maneuvers and explode with nuclear fury. Most terrifying of all were the point defense systems that human engineers had designed to stop incoming missiles. When turned toward enemy ships, they created walls of superheated plasma that could melt through armor like a blowtorch through butter. War leader Grackmore watched in shock as the smaller human ship tore through his outer screen of vessels like they were made of paper. 3 of his ships exploded in the first 30 seconds of combat. 2 more were crippled and drifting, their hulls torn open by weapons that seemed to ignore their shields. "All ships, concentrate fire on the unknown vessel." Grackmore screamed into his communication system. "Destroy it immediately." But the Defiance was already moving again, dancing between enemy fire with maneuvers that should have torn the ship apart. Captain Davis was ordering actions that violated every principle of safe space travel. She had her ship rammed through debris fields from destroyed enemy vessels, using the wreckage as cover. She rode the shockwaves from explosions to gain extra acceleration. She even used the burning hulks of enemy ships as shields while reloading her weapons. "Captain." Navigator Diego called out over the sound of alarms. "We're taking heavy damage to the port side. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 6. Can we still maneuver?" Angela asked without taking her eyes off the tactical display. "Yes. Engines are still responding." "Then keep us moving. Commander Wilson, prepare the ramming solution." The bridge crew turned to look at their captain with expressions of awe and terror. Victor Wilson had fought in 3 wars and survived dozens of battles, but even he had never heard of anyone attempting what Angela was planning. He said quietly, "A direct ramming attack on their flagship will probably destroy both ships. We'll all die." Angela's smile was fierce and proud. "Not if we do it right. Chief Martinez, can you give me one more burst from those engines?" Luna's voice came back immediately, filled with the same crazy courage that had brought them here. "Power is already being rerouted, Captain. Give me 10 seconds and I'll make these engines scream." The Defiance turned toward the Keth flagship and accelerated at full burn, firing every weapon it had while racing towards certain destruction. At the last possible moment, when collision seemed inevitable, Angela shouted the order that would be remembered across the galaxy. "Emergency reverse thrust. Now." The human ship scraped along the side of the enemy flagship, its armored hull tearing massive gouges in the Keth vessel's armor. At point-blank range, the Defiance unleashed every missile it had left, sending nuclear warheads directly through the holes it had just carved in the enemy's defenses. The Keth flagship exploded in a chain reaction that lit up the entire star system like a new sun being born. War leader Grackmore died with a single thought echoing through his mind. What kind of insane species build ships designed to ram their enemies? The answer would echo across the galaxy for generations: humans do. 18 minutes. That's all it took for the USS Defiance to turn a hopeless situation into a miracle. What had seemed like certain death for 40,000 innocent people became the greatest rescue mission in galactic history. The Keth fleet that had terrorized the mining station was now scattered across space, some ships destroyed, others limping away with their hulls cracked and their warriors beaten. Administrator Veltun stood in his command center, staring at displays that showed impossible things. 5 massive Keth warships had been completely destroyed, turned into clouds of glowing debris that drifted through space like metal snowflakes. 4 more enemy vessels were crippled, their engines dead and their weapons systems offline. The remaining Keth ships were fleeing toward the edge of the star system as fast as their damaged engines could carry them. But the most impossible sight of all was the human ship that had made this miracle happen. The USS Defiance looked like it had been through a war. Its hull was scarred and blackened from enemy fire. Atmosphere was leaking from dozens of holes punched through its armor. Pieces of metal and debris trailed behind it like a wounded animal leaving drops of blood. Yet somehow, this battered ship was still moving. Its weapons were powered down now, and it was heading straight toward the mining station. For a moment, Veltun felt a spike of fear. What if these humans were just different conquerors? What if they had driven off the Keth only to claim the station for themselves? Administrator, called Communications Officer Lyra Ka from her station, we're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel. The main display screen flickered to life, showing the face of a human woman. She looked exhausted, with dirt and sweat streaking her face. Her uniform was torn in several places, and there was dried blood on her forehead where something had hit her during the battle. But her eyes were steady and kind. Kepler Station, this is Captain Angela Davis of the United Earthship Defiance, she said. Are you in need of assistance? Velton stared at the screen for a long moment, hardly believing what he was hearing. After 3 days of terror, after watching his people die while the galaxy abandoned them, someone was asking if they needed help. Captain, he managed to say, his voice cracking with emotion, we thought no one was coming. The Galactic Council voted to abandon us. They said we were acceptable losses. Captain Davis's expression hardened for just a moment, showing a flash of anger that made Velton glad she was on their side. Then her voice became gentle again. Administrator, the Council doesn't speak for humanity. We received your distress signal, and we came as fast as we could. No one gets left behind on our watch. Over the next 6 hours, something beautiful happened in the Kepler system. The crew of the Defiance worked alongside the Harani people to repair the damage done by 3 days of enemy attacks. Human engineers shared their knowledge freely, showing the insect-like aliens how to strengthen their shields and repair their hull breaches more efficiently. Chief Engineer Luna Martinez spent hours with Harani technical crews, sketching diagrams and explaining human repair techniques that could make their station stronger than it had ever been before. She didn't ask for payment or trade agreements. She just shared her knowledge because people needed help. Dr. Patricia Young set up emergency medical stations throughout the damaged sections of the mining station. She worked side by side with Harani medics, learning their biology while teaching them human medical techniques. Together, they saved lives that would have been lost without immediate treatment. But perhaps the most remarkable thing happened when rescue teams found survivors from the destroyed Keth warships floating in escape pods throughout the system. Captain Davis ordered her people to rescue these enemy soldiers and treat them with the same care they showed the Harani civilians. When some of her crew questioned this decision, Angela's response was simple: they're not our enemies anymore. They're people who need help. Keth warriors who had come to kill and conquer found themselves being pulled from wrecked ships by the same humans who had defeated them in battle. Instead of execution or torture, they received medical treatment and were given comfortable quarters aboard the Defiance. Many of these warriors had never experienced mercy from a defeated enemy before. Administrator Velton found Captain Davis in one of the medical bays, personally operating a scanner to help treat wounded civilians. He watched her work for a moment, still trying to understand what had happened to his world. Captain Davis, he finally said, I have to ask you something. Why did you come here? Your species has no treaty with ours. You have no trade agreements or military alliances. You gain nothing from saving us. So why risk your lives for people you've never met? Angela looked up from the medical equipment, and Velton saw something in her eyes that he had never seen in any of the great galactic civilizations. It was warmth. It was the kind of caring that put other people's needs ahead of your own safety. Administrator, she said, where I come from, we have an old saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We heard your call for help. What else were we supposed to do? Walk away and let innocent people die because it wasn't profitable to save them? News of the Kepler rescue spread across the galaxy faster than the ships that carried it. Within hours, every major civilization knew that an unknown human vessel had defeated a Keth fleet 15 times its size and rescued 40,000. The council convened in emergency session, their crystal chambers buzzing with confused voices in dozens of alien languages. Representatives who had spent centuries calculating the mathematics of civilization suddenly found themselves trying to understand the mathematics of courage. Ambassador Robert Carter stood before the assembled aliens, no longer the quiet observer who had sat politely in the back of their chambers. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had just watched his species prove something important to the galaxy. For 2 years, I've listened to your debates about acceptable losses and cold equations, he began. You've taught me about the mathematics of civilization. Today, I'd like to teach you about the mathematics of humanity. He activated a holographic display that filled the air above the chamber with images from Earth's history. Human soldiers charging across beaches while enemy bullets cut down their friends. Firefighters running into collapsing buildings to save strangers. Ordinary people standing between tyrants and the innocent, even when they were vastly outnumbered. We don't calculate acceptable losses, Robert continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. We calculate acceptable risks. And we've decided that the risk of crossing the galaxy to save people we've never met is acceptable. The risk of standing up to bullies and tyrants is acceptable. The risk of doing what's right, even when it's not profitable or politically convenient, is acceptable. Chancellor Corvex rose slowly from his seat, his pale blue skin seeming to glow under the chamber lights. Ambassador Carter, your species' actions were reckless and destabilizing. They violated numerous interstellar laws and treaties. Robert smiled, and there was something dangerous in that smile. Yes, they were reckless. And we'll do it again if we have to. Every single time someone calls for help and the rest of the galaxy decides it's not worth the trouble. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the battered Defiance, limping home through hyperspace toward human territory, Captain Angela received a priority message from Admiral Tyler Jackson. His weathered face appeared on her screen, and she could see him trying not to smile. Captain Davis, you are hereby ordered to report for debriefing regarding unauthorized military action in the Kepler system, he said in his official voice. Then his expression softened. Also, congratulations on a job well done. The President sends her personal regards, and there's talk of a medal ceremony when you get home. Lieutenant Commander Victor Wilson looked up from his damage control reports. Captain, what happens now? After we get home and face whatever consequences are waiting for us. Angela studied the star charts on her display, seeing dozens of systems marked in red where conflicts raged and civilians died while the great powers of the galaxy calculated acceptable losses and profitable interventions. Now, Commander, we build more ships like this one. We train more crews like ours. She turned to face her bridge crew, these 200 volunteers who had followed her into impossible odds because it was the right thing to do. They were tired, blooded, and scarred, but they were unbroken. Because somewhere out there, people are calling for help. And as long as there are humans in this galaxy, someone will answer. The USS Defiance disappeared into hyperspace, its engines howling their defiant song across the void. Behind them, the rescued civilians of Kepler Station began rebuilding their lives, knowing they would never be alone again. And across the galaxy, from the crystal palaces of the great civilizations to the frontier colonies on the edge of known space, other species began to whisper a phrase that would change everything: the humans are coming.